Great. Thanks so much for that overview, Michael. I love the description of the collaborative nature of the industry and people coming together, which I think for those of us who love diving know that's what diving is all about. I'd like to turn it to you next to talk a little bit about what you're seeing at RAID, how you all have been thinking about, particularly for places impacted by COVID-19, what a return or a safe return looks like for some of your affiliates, and any other comments you might have building from Michael's perspectives.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve, and thanks, Michael. Just to carry on with that theme, that Charles Dickens theme that Michael brought up on Tale of Two Cities, it is the best of times and the worst of times. The best of times because it's always nice when an industry gets a little bit of a kick in the backside, but this one was a little too hard. When the year started out, the president of RAID and I were attending a dive show in Birmingham, UK, Birmingham, England, and at that time, one of our senior managers at RAID had spoken to Paul and I just before we left to go to the show, and we were talking about this scenario that was going on in China, and it looked like this could be the pandemic that everyone's been talking about for 5 or 6 years. You know, this could be the one. I lived in Toronto. I live north of Toronto now in Canada, but Toronto was hit very badly in 2003 by the SARS epidemic, which was kind of the last pandemic that we had to deal with, certainly here in Canada. And when we were talking prior to going to the show to our senior manager, he was saying, this is going to have a devastating effect on our industry. And we agreed. And what was remarkable was at the show, and I used to, well, we all still are in the adventure travel industry. I think we should recognize that. But Paul and I walked around to all of the travel. It's a dive show, so there's lots of travel, like inbound operators and outbound operators there. And not one of them, not one, had any plan B for the pandemic. They were saying, like literally, I was talking to one, we were talking to one group, and they were looking at us as though we had on those devil masks, you know, those silicone masks, and they did not get. And what astonished me at the time, we walked away from that show and went, oh Christ, you know, people just don't get it. It astonished me that people didn't seem to get it. Now, I can't say that was 100% of the people there didn't understand the ramifications of what looked like it was going to happen, because I didn't speak to every one of them. But we went to every booth, and it was, the consensus was, this will not affect us. And the reason I bring this up is not to point out how dumb we all are, but how much we needed that kick in the backside as an industry to forget about all the petty nonsense that was going on for us interagency, and to start thinking as an industry and saying, okay, I know we're all going after the same pie, and I've heard this for many years, let's make the pie bigger. The way you make the pie bigger is to start cooperating. So it's the best of times, because I think I can see within the little area where we work, we can see a lot more cooperation than there used to be. And of course, it's the worst of times because we've lost many businesses, we've lost many people. I'm sure some of us have lost close friends, or certainly had close friends laid up for a long time, and they're still convalescing. So that's not too great. But as an organization, I think one of the things that we've had to do is to be very positive. I mean, my work day, I work with a team in the UK. I live in Canada, so there's a 5-hour time difference. I get up at 5:30 in the morning and start work. And that's when I look at my incoming mail and realize that there's a few months ago, it was a lot of people there saying, what the hell are we going to do? And it's very easy to turn around and say, training and the business side of it, have to be separate. But when you've got people who are training, but they don't have the money to open their shop and pay their rent, the two get intermingled. So you start to think about the business aspect of the dive industry as well. That probably was the first couple of months of it, was really running around like chickens with our heads cut off, seeing what we could do to keep people in business. And then after a while, we started to get the hang of that and started to try to think very laterally about helping the industry as a whole by making it, on the business side, giving them some things that they could do, but on my side, actually looking at how we can continue training while still keeping people safe, not just safe from the water and safe from the creatures in the water and keeping the creatures safe from us, but how we could stop the spread of this terrible virus. So we spent a great deal of time doing research, listening to the experts, and trying to come up with creative ways to do things like S drills and air sharing exercises and what it meant to be on a dive boat and have social distancing. So that's really, from my aspect, from my point of view, what the pandemic has done is cooperation. I think there's better cooperation now, interagency-wise. Some lateral thinking, some thinking about how can we, from the business point of view, finally get down to the process of looking at that pie and wondering how we can bake it to make it bigger, realizing what the core competency is of all the individual components in this industry. And for us, for me, for my department, concentrating on ways to think creatively about those. I mean, an air sharing exercise. If I swim up to you and give you an out of air, what are you going to do? Well, our medical experts didn't really like it when I said, well, you got a straight choice between drowning and having a 50-50 chance of getting a virus. I know what I'm going to choose. Apparently, we had to come up with a more creative solution than that. So we did. I think that's it.
Yeah. Great. One follow-up, Steve, that just came up as you were talking in our chat. Has RAID changed some of the requirements for affiliated dive shops as it relates to safety and precautionary measures that should be in place around social distancing, cleaning and sanitizing of equipment and things like that?
Yeah, one of the first things that we did was speak to our medical consultants. And of course, Dan was out there coming up with some really useful information, some information that you could actually cite as and just to go back a little, the worst possible thing, I think, for an instructor or for a dive center, regardless of which agency they teach for, the very worst thing they can do is start giving people advice on how to do this, how to disinfect, how to social distance, without citing an expert. And I sent a memo out to our membership saying, unless you're a PhD or a medical doctor who specializes, or physiologist, who specializes in contagious diseases and have accreditation in that field, keep your mouth shut. There were a couple of expletives in there as well, but it was really, don't give advice to people if you cannot cite a reliable, peer-reviewed source, not the president of the United States of America, but someone who's actually got some credibility when it comes to giving advice on this. And the thing that we started out with was disinfecting equipment, because we all, that's the one thing at a base level. The punters that come in for a entry level course don't have their own gear. So the first thing we did was research and find out what were the what was on the EPA list N, I think it is, which is the list of disinfectants that actually have an impact on the COVID virus. And if anybody, I don't have the URL for that, but if you do a Google search for EPA list N for November, you will find a growing list of recommended disinfectants. And I think that was the best single thing that we did for our membership right off, was start pushing that list out, and it has grown over the last few months. So it's now, I mean, Stericyde, Virkon S, phenolic, and all that has actually been added to it as we've gone on. So it's quite an extensive list. And then, of course, there's the actual changing the way the drills are done. So we came out very, very early on, we came out with a couple of memos to our members saying, when you do an air sharing drill, do this. When you do an S drill, do this. So that there was no chance, or very little chance of cross-contamination. No picking up your buddy's second stage and shoving it in your mouth. Does that answer your question?
That does. That's fantastic, and I think it's a great transition to our next speaker,